All right, we are live. What's up, Red Letter Leaders? It is Zach Zender. We're doing our monthly webinar and really excited for this month's webinar. We're going to be featuring in just a moment. I'll introduce Seth Hinz and the conversation of what we're going to be talking about. So as you come in to the webinar today, I got a couple things I want to tell you about. First, I can see people are getting here. So let us know who you are, where you're watching from. In the chat, what church you're a part of. We love to know who that we're connecting with. And two things that you can do for the webinar right now. Number one is I put a poll question live, and I'd love to know what social media platform do you feel most comfortable using for your church or ministry. So you can see that on the right-hand side. There's a poll question. Go ahead and answer that. Also, you can see a little blue button up there for offers. Before we get into a conversation with Seth, I want to keep you posted on what's happening in the red letter world. And we are getting ready to launch our next 40-day challenge this fall called Serving Challenge. We believe this is a 40-day challenge that's going to get the people in your church out of the church like never before, serving your community. Really excited how it's all coming together. The books are in their final design stages, going to be going to print soon. This week, I've been filming the last 3 days. If you're on my Red Letter Leaders Facebook group, you've seen some pictures of me in some really cool locations, filming in a cave and filming the most beautiful church you'd could ever think of. We finished last night filming in an escape room, which was pretty fun too. So there's some deals right now to lock in first wave pricing for Serving Challenge. There's deals that go up in price the next month and then once more the next month. And so you can lock in the best price right now. And again, that's going to be on the right-hand side of Serving Challenge. What's up, Dave Hall and Roy and Chris and Marilyn, Christopher Stevens, David, Kelsey, Andrea, my director of operations, is also here. Also good to see all of you guys. Thanks so much for being with us. And of course, Allison Zender from Omaha. Love that woman. So, all right, last thing before I introduce our guest today, save the date, and I'll put all this information in our Red Letter Leaders Facebook group as well. Our next webinar is going to be June 21st from noon to 1 Central Time. June 21st, that's a Wednesday. It's called Amplifying the Quality and Multiplying the Quantity of Disciples. I am really excited next month to tell you about our first actual kind of premier product for church leaders and pastors. It's going to be called the Disciple Making Playbook, and it's a video online course. And so I'm going to give you a big preview next month in that webinar of what the Disciple Making Playbook is all about. We believe through this online course, it's going to help you create a Jesus-centered disciple-making strategy that everyone in your church can get excited about. So I'm excited to help you with that next month. All right. That was a lot there. So again, let us know who you are. Answer that poll. We got the offer live. But right now, I want to bring in our guest today. Let's welcome Seth Hinz to the Red Letter Leader webinar. Seth, it's great to have you. Seth is a certified StoryBrand guide. We're going to hear a little bit about what that means. The current director of branding and marketing for Lutheran Bible Translators, a really awesome organization doing great in our world today. And he's going to help us navigate this ever-changing world, especially when it comes to marketing, getting the word out, and things like that. Seth, what's up, man? How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's great to be with everybody. I love talking about this stuff. So just thanks everybody for carving out time to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. And that's what these webinars are really about, is pouring as much as we can into these church leaders and pastors in just about an hour this once a month. And so I know you're going to do just that. In fact, if you'd hang to the end, Seth's got something for us that he's going to be talking about, that if you enjoyed this conversation, it's going to be really beneficial for you to hear what he says at the end. And so make sure you stick on to the end to hear that. But we're going to get going, and I see more people popping in today. So, hey, Amber and Josiah and Rebecca and Anthony, good to have you guys with us today. All right, Seth. So I want to talk today about AI and its current and foreseeable impact. So I want to get there, but first I want to back up, and I want us to discuss brand identity. So I want you to kind of tell churches what is brand identity and why it's important for them to know what their brand identity is.
That's great. So brand identity, from me and from where I'm coming from, is everyone's experience with your organization, whether that's the visuals that communicate something, the messaging that you communicate with something, the live events, everything, every touch point that you have with somebody, there has to be consistency and you have to be telling a story throughout. So my experience is as a StoryBrand guide. A few years ago, I got certified in that process because I love story. It's built on the movie concept of a 7-part structure for every story. And so if you think about some of the big movies like Star Wars or Hunger Games, different ones like that, there is a simple structure. And so if you don't want movies ruined for you, you can hop off and maybe skip this part later. But in most stories, there's a character who has something they want. Things get disrupted. They have a problem that they can't overcome. There's an external problem. There's an internal problem. It makes them feel something. And then we need to express, like, philosophically, why is that problem? Just why is that wrong? And then at that point, once we kind of address those two things, character, want, and problem, then we introduce ourselves. We talk about us as a guide. How are we equipped to help you solve that problem and get what you want? Then we make sure that they know that there's a plan. There's a simple 3-step plan, something to get people moving, and then we call them to action. And throughout our storytelling, there's success hinted at and there's failure hinted at. If things go wrong, it's possible life could look like this. It could stay the same or it could get worse. But then there's success. And that's where we spend a lot of our time in marketing, is talking about the future self, or what life could look like if you address your problems. And so when we talk about brand messaging, I spend a lot of my time with organizations figuring out who we're talking to and what are the problems that they're facing every day that they just can't seem to overcome.
That's good. All right. So want to make sure I heard correctly. So I heard start with character, and then what's the problem the character has? Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So character.
And then how are you the guide, or how can you be helpful?
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the plan? And then what's the call to action? Are those the 5 steps?
Yep. 5 steps. And then there's success and failure at the end.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So after the action, there's success, failure. So awesome. I want to take that framework a little bit then, and I want to at least focus for the first part, kind of chronologically through that. I want to look at character. I think, and I'd love to hear you go a little bit further on this.
Yeah.
Right. We have to understand who it is we're reaching. And I know I was coached, Seth, a few years ago. I'd heard of the movie Avatar, but someone coached me to create an avatar for our business, Red Letter Living. And I didn't even know what that really meant. But we've gone through this exercise as a business, and we've created actually 2 avatars for our business. But talk to me about what an avatar is, and is that similar to the character piece that you're talking about in the StoryBrand?
Yes. So the avatar or persona, who is it that you're talking to? And so that 7-part structure I was talking about, it's really like the backbone of what you're doing in your messaging. It creates the spine. It creates what everything else is built on. And so when you hear a lot of these marketing words that are thrown out, they can really be applied to a lot of those different sections. So persona, avatar, that's where we lean in and we discover the most we can about the people that we're talking to. Because if you try to say, like, we're trying to reach everybody, nobody's going to resonate with that, because usually trying to reach everyone results in marketing messages that are very bland and not pointed and not specific. What I like to do is go super specific so that people can see a story that you're telling and bring that and apply that for themselves. You don't have to do that work for people. You need to tell a story so people can resonate with that. So with an avatar, you want to find out who you're talking to. And so let's say if you're in a suburban neighborhood, most likely you're talking to somebody who you would have to pick. Are we going to talk to a husband or a wife? So you pick one of those. You can have 2 avatars. That's fine. But you can pick the husband or a wife. And so the husband, let's say he's, 40 to 50 years old. He enjoys golfing. He makes a certain amount of money every year. These are the number of kids that he has. These are some of his hobbies, etc. We want to know the most we can about this character, so that we can speak his language.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's usually where it happens. And you can dive pretty deep into that and really get to know somebody. But
That's good. I just about fit into your category of 40 to 50 that like golf. I turned
I don't know
40.
why I guess I saw you and I was like, okay.
I turned 40 on July 3rd. So I'm not quite the guy yet, but in like 2 months, I'm going to fit perfectly into that. So talk to me then about how, so what I heard there, it's important to know who you're talking to. And you mentioned don't stay broad, be very specific. And sure, you can have more than one avatar, but talk to me a little bit about how you would go about creating your own avatar or understanding what character or person we're trying to reach. Like, what are some things churches can do to kind of help with that?
Yeah, if I were starting with a church and trying to create an avatar, we would be asking a lot of questions. And so we would be looking at the demographics of our current church, like trying to find where do we seem to resonate really well with people? What are the ministries that we offer? And how do those, what are we really good at?
Yeah.
And how do we lean into that? So who are you resonating with right now? And let that be a guide for you. And you want to find out as much as you can about that target audience and say, why is it that 42-year-old men with families of 3 seem to be really resonating with this and putting their kids in our kids ministry program? So I would, at that point, then start having you could either do a broad survey. I find the most insight comes from having one-on-one conversations with people and getting to know them. So find some people who are in your current audience and start having conversations about what they're interested in, what motivates them, what keeps them up at night. And asking those kinds of questions helps you really start to understand the problems and the internal kind of emotions that they're dealing with, but also where they're looking in 5 years. And so you really want to get to know your people before you start to go out and branch out. So what's working now should be guiding you.
Yeah, I like that emphasis too on like who do you already have that you've resonated with? Because likely you're reaching somebody, whether you had a marketing or understanding of how you're doing that, you are. And so if you're already reaching somebody, now let's do the back work and figure out what is it about that person and the particular church and ministry that we have that's connecting with that, rather than, well, we'd like to reach this person, right? Do you ever find that churches do that? Sometimes they're already reaching a certain type of person, but then the one they're trying to reach is totally different. And how do you navigate that if there is that?
Yeah. I feel like that's 75% of the churches I talk to are saying we are doing really well in the 60 plus crowd. They've been lifers. They're sticking with us. It's great. We really want young families in here. And so I think every church has to reckon with, okay, why aren't we currently reaching that? But what do our 60 plus crowd love about our church? What do they wish they could share with some people? What are they so passionate that they would want to be part of the offerings that would reach that audience? And so we need to explore, who do we have, who's passionate about getting people into the church, and can we provide ministries that might reach those folks? So again, it's all about who do we currently have before trying to go out and reach out. So
it's good. Hey guys, as you're listening, if you have questions, feel free to either put them in the chat, or on the chat feature, you also see a Q&A only button. Either place is fine. I'll be able to find it either way as I'm interviewing Seth. But yeah, there will hopefully be some time at the end to answer some of your questions. And so if you want a chance at having your question answered, that's where you put it. So that's really good. What I want to do, Seth, is we've actually, I mentioned our Red Letter business, Red Letter Living. We've come up with 2 avatars. One of them is for like church leaders and pastors. And so like what we're doing now is specifically for that avatar. And then we have a second avatar, which is more for the everyday follower. So in our world, there's leader and there's follower. And we're trying to talk to each one of them with different products and not both of them at the same time. And so what I'm going to do after this interview, directly after, in my Red Letter Leaders Facebook group, if you're not a part of that, it's a free private Facebook group. I'll put the link in just a second here on the chat. But be a part of that. I'm going to share our 2 avatars. Our leader one, his name is Pastor Pete, and he's 42 years old from Wichita, Kansas, leading a church of just over 200. And we get super granular. I mean, it's like 2 pages long. And then our follower one, we call them the Andersons, and they're a couple in their 30s that is in New Braunfels. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. Texas. It's a suburb outside of San Antonio. But anyway, we share a little bit about who they are and what they're experiencing. And then when they run into us, here's what they can feel and here's what they'll experience. And it's been a really helpful exercise for us as we think about our business and who we're talking to. When I'm talking to church leaders, I'm thinking of Pastor Pete. When we're talking to followers or writing material for everyday followers, I'm thinking of the Andersons and trying to help them. And so I'm going to put those in our Facebook group. And by the way, if any of you want to take a stab at an avatar for your church or your ministry, feel free to throw it in the Red Letter Leaders Facebook group. I'll have a little time later to pop in and look at them and give some insight or encouragement from my side, and maybe Seth can as well. So that's really great. I want to do that. But because what the avatar does is it kind of tells story and it helps you understand problems, which you said was the second piece. And so talk to me then about the importance of solving problems or pain points.
Yeah. So everybody, as we go about our daily lives, we're all living a story. We're trying to accomplish something. We want something, whether that's I want my kids to be growing up with the foundational faith so that they're strong when they grow older. I want to leave a legacy. I want the faith that I'm carrying now to be passed on to new generations. We're all living a story. We all want something at the end of the day. And we really need to recognize what is keeping people from that. And so that's why most churches, we have the church service, but we offer ministries. And so even Rebecca's question in here, we may have 6 different characters.
Yeah, go for it.
But it was a great question. Like, how do we just choose one? Well, so what I would recommend then is go take maybe one of your ministries right now and do the avatar experience and try to wrestle with who are we reaching? What is it that they want? Let's say it's a MOPS group, mothers of preschoolers. What problem are they facing? Well, and I don't know exactly, so forgive me and correct me if I'm wrong. But what it seems like is that they want community. They want to get back out of the house and connect with other people who are facing some of the same issues that they are. They want to know they're not alone in this really hard time of life where it's exciting, yes, about a newborn, but you're also trying to raise them and the problems that come up with that. So knowing that they're not alone, we're trying to solve that for them by bringing people together and give encouragement and all that. So go one by one through your ministries and you can start to identify, like, why do we offer this? We have this solution, but does that problem even exist? And so when you're considering things, and I'll throw it back to you, Zach, like when you're building a new program, I know you have a few new ones coming out, and you're thinking about Pastor Pete, like, how does that avatar help guide you when you're kind of wrestling with, do we go this route or do we build this? Like, how does it help you make decisions?
Yeah, I think a couple things for me, I would speak to that. One of the things I learned is understanding what pain problems they're having. And so identifying the pain. And so, like, for instance, next month's webinar is all about helping pastors to essentially create a discipleship plan and strategy at their church. I know that's a pain problem because I talk to, and I'm in the discipleship space, and I know that a lot of pastors are having that problem. The other reason I know that is because Lifeway Research did a study last year, 2022, and asked, of all things, what is the thing you are willing to invest in and know that you need to? And disciple making was right above technology. So, like, it's a real problem right now.
Yeah.
And so getting that, and then the second piece for me is answering, and it kind of goes along with pain points, the with them question: what's in it for me? What's in it for me? And so in a lot of our marketing or getting the word out, and this doesn't just apply for Red Letter, but for churches as well, I think the most powerful word in advertising and marketing is you. Your, right? It's you or your. And so even all of our webinars, it's helping you and your church elevating your disciples. People want to know what's in it for them. And so finding out those pain points from conversation, and then using objective data if you have it as well to go along with it. And then helping people see that this is for them. So Pastor Pete, it's for you, because here's what you're facing. You need help, and we can be that for you. Here's what it looks like. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you've built your avatar, and you're using that in decision making, not only messaging, but decision making. And so where I find a lot of churches, but then just businesses in general, where we sometimes get in front of ourselves as we talk about what we offer without saying what's in it for them. So our messaging can kind of get muddled when we start talking about like, well, we've got divorce care, we've got grief share, we've got this. And it's like, do you know anybody who's interested? Instead of talking about like, we know there's people in the community that are going through really hard times. The pandemic was a really hard time. A lot of change happened. A lot of grief is experienced and is still being experienced. We want people to know that they're not alone in their community. They don't have to be sitting at home feeling like they're just isolated from the world. We want to draw people back out and into community so that they can see that they are known, they are loved, and they are cared for. And that's why we offer things like Grief Share. And so when we start speaking towards like what is the felt need of the people that we want to reach, instead of just going, we offer this, we can start to resonate, and people can start to see, oh, I know somebody that's going through that. Here's a very simple example. I was just driving down the road, and I pass 1 million car washes in West County, St. Louis. Like every day there's a new
one. They're all over here too. It's crazy.
And so I've never really stopped and stared at one, but somebody put out on their little board, they were like, bug splat, ? And then they were like, dirty mud flaps or something like that. And it started to like, instead of saying, there's a $19.99 offer for monthly thing, I'm like, that's great. But as soon as they started saying the problems that I might be experiencing, I was like, actually, I do have a bunch of bug splats. Actually, I do have a muddy thing. And so they were speaking my story into my story rather than telling their story and what they want. And so that simple reversal, just to be like, we want to tell people's stories so they're more likely to come into our story. And so if we miss that opportunity, there's too much noise going on. People will just filter it out.
It's good. And that actually you just really resonated with me, that bug splat. I was driving 2 days ago, and the worst ever, a big old bug must have been. And I put the windshield wiper on, and it just smeared it all over. And Seth, I was out of windshield washer fluid in the time and had this massive streak right in my eye line. And so I could have used that car wash.
Just saying. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
There's one more thing. So about the problem, when you're talking about and trying to figure out what the external problem is, usually pretty easy. Like people either just aren't connected, so they're not physically with people. They don't have an answer, like they need their car washed, that kind of stuff. Seeing the externals is easy. The internal is probably the hardest part. And so when you're working on a brand script, that 7-part story, there's a parallel item that you really need to take into consideration, and that's the transformational identity. So if somebody has a want and a problem, but they want a solution, so what does the transformation look like? What are they experiencing right now? And what does their preferred future look like? If we can help them solve their problem and they're looking ahead, what do they see in front of them? They're like, if I'm thinking about my kids, and I know that I want them to be in a kids ministry, a youth program that's just pouring into them. Why do I want that? Like right now, so I'm standing on picture like 2 sides of a cliff, and then there's this valley between them. And so on this side, I'm sitting over here and I'm like, man, I really want my kids to just be, like passionate about their faith, learning more about God, and feeling confident about who they are in Jesus. So I want that for my kids. That's over on the other side of the cliff. All of these problems are what I'm facing on a daily basis. So I'm looking down and I'm seeing in the middle, there's screen time there, and that's on me. There is just schedules filling up with sports. There is new expectations of school. Seems like you have to get smarter and smarter every year, earlier and earlier. You just have to know more. And then all the other distractions that exist in their lives. And I'm also seeing like kind of the way that culture seems to be going, and the ability for access to all these different ideas and everything out there. And I'm like, whew, it feels nearly impossible because my schedule's filling up too. And so when I look over there and I'm like, I want that for my kids. If I was on that side of the valley, I would feel confident. I would be at peace. I would feel like things are, I have it figured out. But I'm over here. And so my internal problem is that I'm feeling restless. I'm not peaceful. I'm feeling just a little scatterbrained and a little worried. And so if you can name that internal problem, if you can wrestle with that and figure that out for your avatar, like on a daily basis, I'm feeling a little restless. That's going to help you get messaging that is more specific to them, is going to speak to the internal wrestlings. And they're going to say, yeah, actually, I do feel that. And it's going to agitate the problem. It's going to make the want feel a little bit more urgent. And so as you're working through your story script, you really need to identify not just the external, but the internal too.
That's good. And I think, one of the things we do is we try to look at objective data as well as having those one-on-one conversations. And I think that that's the beauty of the world we live in, is there's more objective data telling us what's going on internally. In our minds and mental health and all these things than ever before. And so I think it's complex, but it's not impossible to start dissecting what that internal stuff is. Seth, I think this is really helpful. Where I think a lot of churches, because it's so easy to go to, I'm thinking of like the announcement spot at church,
right?
It's so easy to just, or the bulletin, let's say for old school, it's so easy to just information dump rather than sharing story, talking through pain point, problem, and then offering solution. And so I love the fact that you are helping churches see before we get to, which I think sometimes the church jumps right to plan. We skip character, problem, guide, and just go plan and action. Let's back up, get the character and the problem, and then let's walk alongside of them as guides. So what are effective ways, and what do you mean by guides? Is that like social media, website, or how in our world today, how do we be an effective guide?
Yes, that's a great question. When we're talking about StoryBrand, the guide is the organization or the nonprofit, the business that is coming alongside them. If you think about, let's go back to the movie thing. In Star Wars, you had Luke, who wanted, to like overcome. He wanted to be a fighter pilot. He wanted to fight the Force. The problem was, the evil empire was like coming against them, and so he had this problem. And all he wanted to do was like figure it out and fight, be a part of the solution. So he met Obi-Wan. And so Obi-Wan in the number 4 there, in number 5, then he had another guide, Yoda. And the whole time they're telling him to trust the Force, and so like do the thing. So if you think about a guide, it's the person in the story who's saying, I empathize with you, and 2, I have authority to help you solve your problem. So Obi-Wan and Yoda both know what Luke is going through. They understand, but they've been through it. They know what it takes to come out on the other side. And so for our churches and our ministries, we need to position. So the guide is positioned as like a person who can help the character solve their problem. And so for a church, we really need to, again, 2 things, empathy and authority. So empathy, you need to use language that shows that you understand what Pastor Pete is going through. You understand what somebody in your community is going through because you're naming their problems. We say, we know you want more peace in your life. We know you don't want to feel restless at night. We know you want to have confidence that your child is on the right track to be learning and growing in faith right now. And so when you name people's problems, you're expressing empathy because you actually understand. You've been there. And then that on itself is great, but you also need to position yourself to say, we have the authority to help you get to that other side. So that's where, like, we talk about getting testimonials all the time. That's really where churches need to lean in. Like, you can use a lot of the objective data and take surveys and stuff. And we've got, 99 people coming every week, and you can use that. But what's really going to help people understand and see where the church can provide a solution to their problems is when you let people speak about kind of their testimony of like, our family, we're experiencing this. When we finally got plugged in here, this is how life changed.
Yeah.
And so you're setting up that problem, that solution, and then success. And so if you frame your testimonials in that simple way, problem, solution, success, you're going to start to resonate with more people because you're allowing somebody else to share their story, which kind of shows the authority that the church has to be a guide. And so empathy and authority, those two have to work in tandem in order to set yourself up and be positioned correctly.
That's awesome. I hadn't heard those two words together, but I really, really like the empathy and authority. And I like the emphasis as well on you don't always have to yourself say, I'm the authority. You let others do that for you. Yes. And that actually is stronger. And so I'm thinking from a church perspective, if you've got an event, if you've got a group or a new ministry, rather than you as the lead pastor or lead communicator for your church, more powerful would be get somebody who's been a part of that ministry or that group to simply share their story. Mm-hmm. And there you're going to have people sign up in droves. Reminder for those that have bumped on late, we've got a poll question. I'm going to close it here just a little bit of what social media platform you feel most comfortable using. So that's over there. All right, Seth, we've talked through character problem guide. Maybe sum up plan and action for me if you can next.
Yep. Most specifically, you want 3 steps. People can't handle more than 3 steps. If you start saying, first you got to register, then you got to show up, and then you got to fill out the survey, and then you got to do this, then people will drop what you're saying. There's the simple analogy we use often in StoryBrand is the bowling ball analogy. And that happens a lot when we're doing announcements up front. And so when you hand somebody an announcement, you're sharing like, hey, we've got this thing coming up. Like somebody standing and listening to your announcements, like, all right, 1 bowling ball. Great. And then you share the next thing. But we also have Saturday night supper coming up. So make sure you're doing that. Next Wednesday is another thing. So now they've got like 3 bowling balls. And it's usually at that 4th where you're like, somebody's like, I'm just not even going to hold on to these anymore. And so they just drop the bowling balls. And so what you thought you were doing was like communicating really effectively and telling them everything. Right. So they can't say, I never heard about it. Well, if you give people too much, they're just going to drop it all. So you need to be more selective about what you're handing out in that way. Yeah.
It's good. I don't know if this is a set rule, but somewhere I heard along the way when it comes to like church announcements, if you will, which is what the bowling ball thing you're just talking about, I think unless it relates to 80% of the people in the room, it's not worth being a public announcement. You don't need to let people know about the 5-person, Johnny's having a potluck Wednesday night because that doesn't relate to everybody. What you need to do is tell the announcements that relate to everybody or full church-wide things. So very good. So all of this has been really helpful. You also then don't just have the knowledge behind it, but then you help churches and you help ministries, and now you're with Lutheran Bible Translators with their online presence. And so I want to switch a little bit to that and talk through like websites and social media. So when you look at like most churches' websites, when it comes to StoryBrand, what do you see? Good, bad, or ugly, or all of them?
Oh gosh, everybody, we're all trying our best. Most of the time, the issue is we're trying to say too much up front. We're trying to put everything on the homepage, and so that's all the events that are coming up, all the blogs that we have, all the service times, this, that, then the other. Here's our staff. And so, I mean, this is kind of like a harkens back to when we were first getting websites and we were like, you know what, you can just throw everything up there. And it's going to be great because people can sort it out. People cannot sort out the information. And so the rule of thumb that we have typically when we're working on a website is you have about 5 seconds with somebody where they're going to determine, does this solve a problem that I have? Does this offer a solution for something that I want? And if it doesn't, you're going to lose them. And they may stick around and click around a little bit, but it's our responsibility to right up front kind of express our main point, what we offer right up front in the header. And when we don't do that, we lose them. And so it's really important. So going back to where we just were with the plan, that 3 steps is really important, but that first step is most important. That's where we get people to take action. And so that's why we have buttons on our website, and we're trying to guide people through to a solution. And so what is the first step that somebody needs to take to get involved? So you need to determine what is going to show up. If they're on desktop, great. If they're on mobile, whatever, what's going to show up above the fold? So when somebody first logs in, is it contact us? Is it going to be schedule an appointment? What is it going to be that gets somebody to the next? My recommendation is to be as specific as possible, because every time I see a contact us button, I don't click it. So we need to be very specific, because I don't know what to contact people about. But if it's something like schedule coffee with pastor, or schedule coffee with a church leader, something like that, I'll be like, I know what you want me to do next. Mm-hmm. You're not giving me everything. You're saying, if I want to get plugged in, this is the next thing to do. And then one of the other kind of faux pas out there is we put up our church website. We take a really nice picture of the building, and then we put that in the header and call it a day. And we say, people know about us. Now it's kind of the Lord will work. And so that's totally true, but we give people a better opportunity to take a next step when we use that header space to tell the story, to show success in our story. What does success look like? And so when you move ahead a little bit on the brand script, what does that look like? And so it's not just the service elements, because that is really important to our church, but people stick around for not just the church stuff, but for the community. And so go back to your avatar, what are the problems that they're facing? If they're feeling disconnected and alone, we want to show them that when they plug into this community, there's an opportunity you're joining something more than just a 1 hour on Sunday. You have an opportunity to plug into a community and not feel alone anymore, to walk with people. So that's show your events, show your narthex, show people connecting with each other, because that's what people want to see. And so there's some great websites doing some phenomenal work on that, and I can share those in the group later in the Red Letter group. So I would love to do that. Let's share a few of those. So we'll share a few website links that, according to Seth, who is the expert, he's going to share some websites that in his mind pass the test for what it looks like for StoryBrand and what should move our websites in the right direction. Go ahead. I think I cut you off. You're going to keep saying. No, I'm right there. I'm already looking at these questions.
There you go. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I see a few of them popping in. We'll get to a few of those in a minute. So website, good. Social media, by the way, our poll ended. It was, which one if you're most comfortable with? Yeah. And 77% are Facebook, 22 Insta, and nothing else. And so I think I saw something. Seth has a Facebook group as well. Let's go ahead and make sure we plug that, called Lutheran Communicators. Is that right?
That's right. Lutheran Communicators. It's just a bunch of people who happen to be Lutheran, and we want to connect better in our day and age. And so we're talking about that stuff all the time. You can ask any question you want. We got a bunch of people speaking into that. So yeah, it's a great community.
Awesome. And it is a good community. I'm a part of it as well. And they had on there something, I think yesterday or today, that was posted that talked about Gen Z when it comes to brands and how they're spending time on social media. Facebook was like in 5th place with less than 5% as the primary. And so, so with that, I don't think that all of us need to get off 77% on Facebook and Gen Z's not there. So everybody needs to flip to TikTok. But what would be your advice to church leaders with regards to social media? What do you normally coach when it comes to StoryBrand and at least how they can be successful in that?
Yeah. Well, okay. You have to realize that nobody's an expert, right? Because it's all changing so fast and we just have to keep up. And so you either need to select, choose as your church. Are we going to commit to social media as a platform for engagement? If you are, then there's some steps you can take. If you're not, then I think it's better to not be there, because I don't think there's anything worse than like looking up a church, clicking on their Facebook link and seeing that their last post was from 2019. Like if that happens, I don't feel like there's life at that church. Like there's something that's missing.
Yeah.
And so what I usually help people see is that when people come to your website, they want to see like the holistic look. They see what you offer and you can make it look really nice. When people, probably the next generation, goes to your website, then they click on your social links. And that's because that social media tells the story of who you really are. So you can't fake photos. I mean, you can, but it's like you can't fake engagement. You can't fake people having fun at events. You can't fake that stuff. And so people want to see. And so part of social media is to tell the story of success. Like what does it look like when people engage here? So it's start doing a lot of pictures. But it really all starts, before we dive down in too far, it really starts with story. So you really need to have your overarching story figured out. And so that's knowing who you're talking to, because that's going to change your post descriptions. What are the problems that they face? That may change the images and the questions that you ask. What is the next step that people should be taking? Because that might affect the links that you put out there. And then what does success look like? And so we are wanting to use that story as a framework for our social media. And so once you have those 7 parts figured out, what I recommend is that you can do kind of a brainstorm with your group where we start doing this exercise, and you can choose how you want to get into it, but you number those. There's different boxes. So character is number 1, problem is number 2. And then you can start saying, okay, let's do 1 and 6. And so if that's character, want, and success, how do those messages come together into a social media post? And so then do 2 and 4. And so that's problem and plan. And so if you're facing this problem, like here's how we've been able to solve that thing, is by taking this first step. And so when you're building out social media content, it's so important that you don't stray too far from your story. And by setting up the StoryBrand story and having the numbers and stuff, it gives you that framework to make sure that you're always telling something that resonates and sticks to your story. Because there's always going to be a new social media platform. It's on us to be consistent so that the brand voice and brand messaging always comes through. So I don't really dive too far deep in with people until we have their story set.
Yeah. Seth, you said something there that I want to ask a little bit, press a little further on. You mentioned like pairing 1 with 6 and 2 with 4. When you look at the StoryBrand, is it a wise thing? Do you always pair 2 things together? I would think if you do all 7, like if someone actually gives you the time to listen to that, great, but good luck. I mean, a lot of times we're sharing a snippet or a post or a photo. And so is it a best practice to bring 2 of them? I think if you only have 1 of them, like, so what? You're right. That's not enough, but to bring at least 2 together, what would you say to that? I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I think the success stuff can always be a one-off. I feel like that's really helpful. So when you're showing pictures of your community and covering an event, I'm like, yeah, show a bunch of pictures, because you don't really want to be like, oh, we had this event. Do you ever feel like you've got a problem in your life? It's more just like, all right, you can show success all day. But if you're feeling hard up for content, I use that as like my just my fail safe. I'm just like, okay, we need to brainstorm some new content. We need to make sure we're telling our story repeatedly. And so I use that as a brainstorming tool to say, how are we going to start telling the message better? One of the things I would recommend is kind of going through, when you're brainstorming, what do we share on social media? You can go through your story bucket by bucket and just saying, like, how would we show that in a photo? What video would potentially tell that message? And so you just go bucket by bucket and start to brainstorm content as a team. And just say, like, okay, I need to take more photos of people having conversations in the narthex. I need to take more photos of kids having an amazing time in our kids ministry. I need to take more photos or testimonial videos of people who have gone to one of our ministries and had that problem addressed encountered our solution and now are experiencing success. And so it's really just wrestling with story and figuring out what the content is that we're going to share. And then the platforms, you adjust based on what the platform needs are, whether that's TikTok or Facebook or whatever. So
that's so good, man. I really like that and think that we have room on our side to grow when it comes to each of those buckets and filling it in. And even I like even some of those pairings of like, let's make sure we do put a 1 and a 6 together and a 2 and a 4 together. And maybe there's other smart pairings that go together. And that way we can come at the same things, but from different angles to accomplish our goal. So I'm going to be spending some time on that personally. All right. We got about 5 minutes before I want to jump to some questions, and I'm fascinated with AI. I did put a new poll question over there. I don't think many have seen it yet. Have you heard of AI being used in the context of church before? It's simple yes or no. So you guys can answer that question. But Seth, I know you're in that world too. So maybe AI, I think, has been around for more longer than people might have thought. But this new Chat GPT or Open Chat AI is kind of really helping us see in a new light the power of AI. So tell us what AI is, this Chat GPT, and then like how you're feeling. Are you afraid of what this is doing? Pitfalls and potentially ways we can leverage it for good. I know there was a lot there, so take it where you want.
That's awesome. Great. So artificial intelligence, gosh, I don't know if I'd be the one to give a definition on it. But I mean, it has been around for a while. You think about like when Word started doing the little squiggle line underneath your text, and we're like, hey, that's probably wrong. I mean, that's computer thinking about like, we've seen this error enough to know that that's an error. And then all of a sudden it moved into, completing your sentences for you in Gmail and all that stuff. It's anticipation. It's knowing, it's pulling from all of human knowledge and saying like, okay, we can help you figure out this thing. And so ChatGPT has created this opportunity. And so it sounds like some of you are already familiar with that, where I can plug in really any problem that I'm encountering. And it can provide me with kind of a virtual assistant kind of situation. For the church in particular, you can use it for social media if you really want to. So I've seen churches using it for I need to create a social media plan for Facebook. Here are our 7 core messages from our StoryBrand thing. How would you go about creating post descriptions for that? And it just churns through that stuff. What I see, and it's really good at it too. What I see, how I've used it before is if I need to start working on a large project, sometimes you can kind of get lost. I get lost when I need to move stuff to spreadsheets too. That's a whole different thing. But when I need to start like creating like a large scale plan, I usually ask ChatGPT, how would you break this down? How would you go about breaking this into smaller tasks? And then it just gives you like the 10 steps. So if I need to revamp our website, what are the things I should be thinking about? And it just says, and then I'm able to kind of go into each one. It's like, tell me more about like how to make sure that we're getting effective photos. Like what does an effective photo do? What are the stories that it's telling? You can dive in deep as deep as you want. What a lot of people are afraid of is that it's going to lead to a lot of, jobs being lost. Now that you don't need, like, copywriters are kind of wrestling with this right now because ChatGPT and other tools like it have a remarkable ability to write cohesively and great narratives. And you can feed it all the information. Here's all the factual information that I need to include in this story. And tell me that story as if you were sharing that with an 8-year-old. And it will rewrite it based on that. And then you can say, write it as if you were a Shakespearean actor. And it can do that. And so it's kind of taking away that kind of copywriting, just churning out material.
Yeah.
On the spreadsheet side, I can ask it to, like, here's all this information. Can you go organize that for me into an Excel spreadsheet? And then it'll do that. So it gives me a starting point for organization of information where I used to just be like, I don't even know, spend hours on it. You can do it in 30 seconds. And so I'm a little nervous about it because it's getting so smart. I'm also seeing that I no longer, the jobs that are like churning stuff out are being like in danger here, because it's like you're a producer and you're like putting stuff into spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. What it's forcing us to do, like if I'm working with a copywriter, what it's forcing us to do is ask questions that AI can't figure out. Like they don't know context. They don't know how, like it's not going to go ask somebody like in your church a question that is going to give them a response. You can't ask ChatGPT to go ask Fred how he's doing in his ministry after being, in his life after experiencing grief share. So what it's forcing us to do on the human side is ask deeper questions. It's forcing us to get more context, because I can have somebody fill out a form and I can have ChatGPT fill it into a story. What I can't do is ask ChatGPT to be a journalist, to go deeper, and to provide more insight and get another angle on something. I can't do that. So what I think it's going to force us to do is to kind of wrestle with, what does it mean to be creative as a human? What does it mean to, like, how are we? And I listened to this podcast recently by Ezra Klein, where he wrestled with like AIs like being built by weirdos or something like that. And what it makes us wrestle with as humans is that we are weird, and we are not machines. And so what is it about our humanity and the way that we've been created that is different than like us sitting down and building spreadsheets? So what kind of insight and angles can we provide that cannot be replicated by an input or whatever comes out of ChatGPT? So I'm really excited about it, because I think it forces us back into creativity, where we were in this moment of humans weren't built to be this machine kind of like just churning out stuff, sitting at a desk, just churning stuff away. We have to go back and say, what can we now create now that we don't have to do that? And so it's taking some things away, but I think it's ultimately going to force us back into creativity and what we were created for. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's I'm really curious to see where it goes in 25 years from now, looking back and see it. Was this a net positive or not for us?
Right.
Because it's the power of it's incredible. And if people haven't played around with it, I would encourage you to do that. Just if you haven't yet, about half the people in the poll have said yes, they're familiar with it and using it. Half said no. For those that aren't, just for the power of it, just so you know, full transparency, I typed in one line on ChatGPT for how to market a online webinar to help pastors with marketing, and this is what it put out in very, very short period of time, 5 seconds. Outside of the 1 or 2 sentences that I inserted about our guest Seth, it put it all there for me. And so it was pretty remarkable what it can do. And I would suggest at least getting familiar with it so you know about it. And we're on the early side of the ChatGPT. And so we'll see where it goes. It's kind of an unknown, and fascinated by both what the good and the bad that could potentially come from it. So,
right.
Cool. So we're going to answer questions in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and take, we had an offer there to join Serving Challenge First Wave. I'm going to take that down, but don't worry, you can get it. It's at servingchallenge.com. We'd love to lock in with your church for a 40-day challenge this fall with Serving Challenge. I'm taking it down because I'm going to put a different offer up. Seth is going to do something for us today. And so, Seth, I'm going to let you tell us what that is all about. So if you go into the offer section, you can click on more for what he's about to tell us.
That's great. So I've been working on this kind of program, this 5-week program, where I typically do like a 3-month coaching call or coaching consultation with a church or a ministry or a business. And we can at least get through a lot of our messaging in that. I want to do a group coaching experience with 5 leaders, 5 entities, whatever it ends up being for your team, where we're going to be walking through your brand script. And at the end of that 5-week experience, you're going to have a pretty solid understanding of what your story is for your organization, so that you can then take that and use it on your website, your social media, your marketing. So it's kind of a sprint experience. We're going to meet once a week for 5 weeks and just be working through the different parts of the brand script. What I'm excited about is the coaching element of it, is the group part, because not only will you be getting feedback from me, but you're going to hear from other ministries as well and other entities, so that you'll see different angles than more than just one person. So I'm excited. This is going to be the first time I'm going to offer it. It's going to start in June. So if you're interested in that coaching experience, this is kind of a one-time thing that I'm offering for the Red Letter group here. So starts in June. But yeah, you can go over to my website at sethhinz.com, and it should be right at the top there.
Cool. So go to his website. You can either click on that through the offer or just type that into the address bar. All right, Seth, we got a few questions here. Before I ask the first one to you, kind of rapid fire. Reminder, next month's webinar, June 21, noon to 1 Central. We're going to talk all about discipleship and what it looks like to help you create a discipleship strategy at your church. You answered Rebecca's earlier, which is great. Roy asks the question, how do you reach that first church to help as a guide? Maybe a little context here, Seth. Roy has a ministry that wants to help. He wants to, I believe, partner with churches to help them, smaller churches, if I remember right, and has an organization called Dove Works. So what does it look like to get that first church on board so that I'm assuming that they would then give the testimonial? Maybe that's more the context. So anyway, yeah, what would you say to that?
Yeah, for the first church, I would, in my context, I'm with the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. What I would do is I would reach out to districts or dioceses who are overseeing a lot of the churches, and they can help you understand, get a better context for like, what are the churches facing in their region? And then I would probably do that wherever you are located, and just get a better understanding for the churches that need help right now. And then I would see if the district wanted to partner with you, because a lot of those smaller churches can't afford maybe the serving, like the opportunity there. If you wanted to offer your services, for free to get started and getting testimonials built up, that's a different thing. But then I would go to where church leaders are hanging out, kind of where, whether that's the Red Letter Facebook group or different, there's just like 1,000,001 Facebook groups. But I would go to those groups and I would start showing up. I would start answering questions that people have. And when you answer questions and you show up and you're a part of communities online, you're going to start to position yourself as a guide for people's stories. And so that's where I've seen the most effect and most impact, is when people show up and they start answering questions just to be kind and offer some value back to the community. And that usually gets people interested to ask, like, what else can you do? And so that starts that relationship. So if you're looking to do it online, I would do it that way. If you're looking to do it in person, I would reach out to districts.
That's awesome. All right. From Dave Hall, what does Seth think about sliders on websites?
I would remove it right now. It's not effective. People don't, again, 5 seconds, people don't stick around for sliders right now. It used to be a thing some years ago. So I would bail on that, and I would figure out, if we get a guest on our website, what is the one thing we want them to do? So think of that one thing. If it's plan their visit, if it's schedule coffee, what is it for your church? And so if you can figure that out, put that at the top, and then use potentially like a video background or just a really compelling image to just lay the foundation for who you are. Don't overwhelm people at the start, and they're definitely not going to wait around for sliders. And for me, who is the audience for your website? It is not your members. It is people that are potentially considering your church.
Yeah.
There are 1,000,001 ways to connect with people who are already in your church, whether that's email or different parts of the website. Your homepage is for somebody who is brand new to your church.
Awesome. So sliders at TGI Friday, maybe yes, but not on websites.
Great place too.
There you go. Mm-hmm. All right. We got 2 questions, 1 minute. Rebecca asks, with a limited number of elements to your story, how do you do regular posts without being repetitive?
Wow, that's a really good question. I'd probably have to
join the coaching group, right?
Yeah, join the coaching group. Without starting to feel repetitive, I would lean into maybe sharing content from other people. I would ask more questions than
Mm-hmm.
producing content. So just try to get people engaged and answering questions. Yeah, I would do that. So yeah,
it's good. I found that to be true. Usually simple pointed questions, maybe even poll on social media, seem to get the best reach and response, which is great. All right, last one from Susan. Who builds AI?
Who builds AI? Oh my goodness. AI is going to build itself pretty soon, right? There's a group called Silicon Valley, OpenAI. Google's coming out with stuff. Bing's coming out with stuff. I mean, it's groups of programmers that are building algorithms and yada yada. So
it's these tech programmers, basically.
Tech program. Look up OpenAI. They're probably building the most popular stuff.
Cool. Seth, man, this was a lot of fun. I hope people take you up on that coaching experience. Thanks so much for being generous with your time, your knowledge. You've put a lot into getting to where you are today to help others, and that is not without in vain, not without a lot of work. You're helping a lot of church leaders and pastors, and so if people want to connect with you, where can they find you these days?
I'm over on Facebook a bunch. LinkedIn's great. You can also just go to my website, SethHinz.com, and you can contact me through that.
Cool. All right, y'all. Blessings, leaders. Have a great month, and we'll see you back for next month's Red Letter Leaders webinar. God bless.